It has been 1 year since the death of George Floyd, and with that in mind, we go back to Minneapolis and join Mike Griffin. He's senior organizer at Community Charge in Minneapolis, and he joined us a year ago on this program. Mike, yesterday was the anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. As you woke up yesterday and took stock of the last year, what went through your mind?
You know, it's been a long year here in Minneapolis, going through the death of George Floyd, a year of protesting, the trial. We've had numerous other unarmed black men being killed in this state as well. So it was a relief yesterday. A year later, finally getting some accountability for these police officers. I was down there at George Floyd Square yesterday. There was black joy. We had rappers. There was free food, free music. There was dancing in the streets. So hopefully this is going to be a change for a better for black Americans.
Mike, when the verdict came in, was that a significant part of the quote-unquote healing process?
Absolutely. The verdict came in. That was it just wasn't just a case about getting accountability for George Floyd, but it actually felt like blackness, being a black person in this country, was on trial. I was at the courthouse when the verdict came in, a multiracial coalition just standing there all waiting for the verdict to come out. Once we found out that these officers were going to be found guilty, there was cheers, crying in the streets. We all were very, very happy. So us getting a guilty verdict for this cop was a step in the right direction. But now we need systemic changes to the police force in this country.
Mike, you know, when we saw the protests a year ago, you mentioned just now a multiracial coalition. You know, one of the things that in my mind said, okay, things are going to change here is that, you know, we saw protests in predominantly white cities in the United States, right? You saw the same types of protests where it was predominantly white crowds. Said, okay, we're onto something here. Something is going to change. Now that you can take stock a year later, where has there been progress? Where has there not been enough progress? How do you talk about the question of progress?
Yeah, so in the years since George Floyd's murder, the Black Lives Matter movement in this country has gone from a small outside political force to actually being a driving force of the political conversation in this country. Cities are now grappling with, how does safety look? Are we going to continue to put unlimited amount of money in the police force? President Biden has come in and said that we're going to stop putting federal dollars into private prisons. These are all steps in the right direction. But what we actually need is comprehensive reform of the police department and of our economy that makes sure Black Lives Matter. In Minneapolis right now, we're having a conversation as if armed police officers should be pulling people over. In other countries, they're not armed police officers that pull you over for minor traffic stops. So we need to look at what does safety look like in this country, and I'm happy that we have a step in the right direction to actually start to have that conversation.
You mentioned the president, Joe Biden. How much does his leadership on this issue matter, and the difference a year makes when it comes to presidents?
I mean, it's stark. I mean, Donald Trump was a full-on racist. And the fact that Donald Trump was president and had that bully pulpit to spew racist rhetoric continuously, having Joe Biden in is a breath of fresh air. You know, yesterday he met with George Floyd's family. And so it's definitely night and day from the Trump presidency to Biden's presidency. But now we need Biden to fight for what's called the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We have a federal bill that needs to be signed into law. Congress is debating it right now in our Senate. So we're hopeful that Biden's in there, but now we actually need federal law to mention, to talk about, and to put into policy why my life matters.
Mike, a year ago when you were on this show, I started following you on Twitter, and I've been following you since, and I've seen that you're actually you're studying to become a pastor. So I want to ask you, how's your faith been in the last year? Has your faith wavered at all over the last year?
Wow. Thank you for that question. I wouldn't say it wavered. I would say we have what the Bible calls righteous anger. And I feel that I'm standing up on the right side of history in this moment. My Savior, the person who I worship, teaches me to love thy neighbor. And so I am standing on the shoulders of my dad, who was a pastor, or my grandfather, who was a pastor, and to make sure that we actually have equality amongst all races in this country. So thank you for that question. I've been asked that question by any of the media that I've been talking to, but like my faith has been strong and it actually has grown over the course of the past year. We've had a pandemic in this country. We've gone through a racial reckoning, and in my life, it has actually brought me closer to God.